What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to another Dacetacular Mind episode. I want to go out the gate of saying thank you for listening to episode 1 and episode 2. If you did, if not, you can go back and give them a listen to. The first one compares my mental state in 2019 versus where it was in 2021. And then I did a nice little retrospective of myself the following week that followed my first couple years at OTW and that first run that I did where I got to play the Dace man. But today, we're going to jump into political affiliations. Now, I kind of got like a rhythm going here with this podcast where one week I kind of talk about a serious subject. The second week I've talked about a retrospective of time period in my life. And here I think we're going to get into another serious subject because political tensions in this country could not be any higher. Now I'm going to start off by saying flat out where I stand. You leave me alone, you do what you want to do, and as long as nothing you do threatens me or anyone else, I don't care. Now, that's very apathetic if you think about it, but at the same time, it's very true. The entire country was founded on that idea of people who were being oppressed or prosecuted for their beliefs or whatever they were practicing in Europe. They came over here, stole land from people, and decided, hey, we're going to try something new where it's the free world. And ultimately, after time, that got warped. So it's very hard to say what my political affiliations are. I don't believe in red and I don't believe in blue. I have a lot of things that I do believe in that fall under the red category, and I have a lot of things I believe in that fall under the blue category. I think, for instance, when it comes to things that I believe in, I believe every person has the right to believe what they want, to say what they want, to do what they want. The limitation of doing what they want, usually I draw the line of don't you physically harm me? Don't you physically harm anyone else? And don't cause chaos in other people's worlds. So essentially, if everybody just lived in bubbles, life would be great. But I think it's an interesting conversation to be had for the mere fact of every time a general election comes up, and in my adult life, I've been a part of 4 now. 4. I voted in 4. Nope, I voted in 3, but I was able to vote in 4. I didn't take any of them serious because I don't believe in the Electoral College. I don't believe in a one-on-one scenario for president. It's not that black and white when it comes to subjects. And I also, I'm going to admit it right now, I don't think people that old should be making decisions that have been direct the country for the next 30 years. Point an example, we just had an election in 2020 where both men were well over 70 and so out of touch. I just don't get it. So I'm going to tell you straight up who I voted for at each election. You probably get mad at me. You probably don't care, but I'm going to tell you my rationale for it. So the first time I was able to vote was the 2008 election, which featured Barack Obama versus John McCain. Didn't know shit about politics. Didn't care. Was pressured into voting because that's what you're supposed to do. It's your American right. And then I went and voted for my friend Mandy DiPietro. She didn't win. I was disappointed. But I never casted a vote for either Barack Obama or John McCain. I was okay with the results of Barack Obama. In the later years, I would change my mind. But at that time, I didn't care out of the two of them who got it. Both seemed like a better option than the George W. Bush era we came off of. Don't get me wrong, the George W. Bush era was hilarious to me. Gave us great content. Launched Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart into infamy. And gave us that little Bush cartoon, which was phenomenal. But in 2012, when Obama was up for re-election and went one-on-one with Mitt Romney, I was unfortunately out of state. And I didn't, not caring so much about politics at the time, I didn't go and get an absentee vote. I was traveling for work. I happened to be in the state of Texas, which, mind you, not fun at all, when Barack Obama won re-election. A lot of people were talking about seceding from the Union because that's worked so well in the past. And, there was a petition filed on the whitehouse.gov to have Texas secede. I believe the majority of the signatures were for people that didn't live in Texas that said, yeah, please just go. But I don't know who I would have voted for that one either. And the simple fact of it is I didn't care. Things were going pretty well. I didn't care either way. I thought Obama was doing an okay job. Didn't know much about Mitt and wasn't making enough money to actually care what happened to money. I was on the road so much, I didn't care. So you'll see that the most of my political ambitions in the early conversations of my life is I just don't care. And actually, that'll probably sum up about 90% of how I feel about most issues. Like, oh, you want to do that thing? I don't care. Just do what you want as long as it doesn't affect me. When it affects me, that's when I get pulled in. And that's kind of what happened in the 2016 election. So, working with the company that I was working with and the Obamacare, or the public health care for all program they were trying to push, and did push, really took a club to the knees of private insurance. So we were put in a weird scenario where, okay, you have a job, so you don't qualify for that health care for all. That really, in concept, yes, it makes sense to help out those without. But by helping those without, and I want to point this out there, helping those without, but not really giving them much, you forced the hand of corporate America to find the cheapest alternative of healthcare, and now a healthcare plan that was meh to begin with was now lower than what was being offered by the government, of which I did not qualify for because I had a job and I had to take what was offered by that job. And now I know, you're going to say, hey, you can go shop around for private insurance, but who's got time? Who understands the legalese of that? And I was okay with what I had. Plus, also, again, young, didn't care, didn't go to the doctor, so it wasn't a pressing issue, but I began watching the unfolding of what this healthcare debacle was going to be. And, in being, as I talked about last week on my Dacetacular Mind, I was wrestling. And I ended up getting back into it again during the second term of Obama. And I started hurting because I was no longer super young. I was over 25 young, which was not fun. Not really fun at all. So now you start looking at things like that, which is realistic, of like, hey, you might have to go to the doctor to get that checked out. I wouldn't. Ultimately, I wouldn't. But it was a thing that was actually going to be like a potential issue down the road. So as 2016 moved on, it was kind of like, well, now I need change. Okay? I don't want... Obama brought a lot of change to America, and I think a lot of good change, but not radical change. Because if you look at politics as a whole, the real driving force of what's being done lies within the Senate or the House of Representatives. And you don't get to influence that. And that sucks. And that's part of my beef with the Electoral College. Living in the state of New Jersey, my entire existence, the state of New Jersey has always been awarded to a Democratic president candidate. Gore got it. John Kerry got it. Obama got it twice. Hillary got it. Biden got it. Clinton won it twice. It's just, and whoever, was it Dacaucus? I'm pretty sure he got it when he was running against HW. And that to me is unfair, because there are Republicans that lie within New Jersey, just as there are Democrats that lie in the state of Texas or lie in the state of Georgia, as we saw prominently in 2020. To me, the Electoral College is dated. A lot of people will say, oh, you need it So it balances out the representation of the country. So the people at the cities don't dominate decision making across the board. And that's where I call bullshit. And here's why I call bullshit. The president isn't the end all be all. He's 1/3 of an entire system. If you really want your voice heard in the middle of America, or in Gloucester County, New Jersey, or in Cobb County, Georgia, and I only know that because of the big boss man from WWE, you go and vote for your House of Representatives. You go and vote for your senator. That's how you get the local representation. So a lot of people are going to have issues with, like, people who stood on some kind of weird ground that represents their base, even though their base might be wrong. Well, they're doing their job. If they're representing their base, they're doing a lot better than people who don't represent their base. And I commend them. I don't think they're right. I think most of them are dumb. But at least they're doing their job. The House of Representatives is meant to represent each district. The Senate is meant to represent each state. Now, when we get into the conversation of the Electoral College, it bothers me because you're saying that you need equal distribution of the votes, so it's weighted. Because there's not that many people that live in Iowa because it's farmland, and they have a lot more different views than the people who live closer to New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, D.C., all these major metropolis areas. And I call bullshit because the president is a popularity contest, straightforward. You are electing one guy to represent the entire country. Why wouldn't the majority select that candidate? And that's why the Electoral College drives me nuts, and that's why voting for president I've never taken serious. You look at all the candidates that start running the year before the actual general election and those primaries, and it's like there's a lot of good people with voices here. And if you got away from that stupid Electoral College, they could all be heard in November. Gives people a better shot. Gives more chance for change. For the two elections that did matter to me, we were handed awful options. So we'll start with 2016 when it came down to Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Now, in my mind, and I'm going to be honest with you, I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Point blank. And I'm going to tell you why. I did not care for Hillary Clinton. And no, it's not because she was a woman. I just saw her as establishment. I saw her who served on the Obama administration, who worked hand in hand with Clinton during his run, heading up a lot of different projects under his presidency. She was a senator of New York, and she represents what is aggravating about this entire system of career politicians. They didn't change things 30 years ago. They're not going to change it now. Fuck you, Mitch McConnell. Go away. That type of thing. Mitch McConnell's been in office longer than I've been alive, and that to me is a problem. I'm 32 right now. I think he's been in this fucking Senate for 34 years. I apologize for cursing, but it's really frustrating to think that there are people like him, Schumer, Pelosi, all of them, who have been there that long. What have you accomplished except for just cockblocking any idea of progression? Breathe, Chris, breathe. But we're focusing on the 26 general elections. So there you have Hillary Clinton that to me represented the establishment. Clinton name is known in politics. We had a president for 8 years, but with the last name of Clinton. And she had baggage. She had political baggage with her. On the flip side, you had a personality, Donald Trump. And he's such a weird anomaly to behold. And when I was watching, so the logic that I used, and it's very hard to defend it because you know where he ends up. We know the end of the story, and you're trying to talk about what your state of mind was at the beginning of the story. And you know you messed up. Correction. You fucked up. He was a businessman. He somehow stayed a billionaire while making mistakes. He knew how to shuffle money to make things work. Now, if there's one thing that did come out of the Trump presidency that I approved of, I got more money in my check. He changed the tax brackets that actually helped. I started seeing more money in my paycheck rather than going into taxes. The downside to that, he used our tax money for a lot of dumbass shit. So how much more money could we have gotten if he didn't do the dumbass shit? The other side of it, too, is he was a Democrat up until the 2016 election. 2015 to be more exact. He switched parties because he looked at it and said, I could win on the Republican side. And I don't blame him for that. As a man who does not believe in the two-party system, red and blue, it makes sense. I would look at both parties and go, okay, she's got momentum over there, even though that was kind of curved by Bernie for a bit. No one has momentum on the Republican side. Because we still are at a tipping point. We're like teetering on the edge of the cliff so hard that we just need a really good push. But we're on that I can't say the word. But we're tipping. We're tipping hard. So I thought, if anyone is going to inject chaos, shake up the establishment, maybe break down these stupid walls of senators and House of Representatives who have been there since the building opened, get them off the floor, and maybe get more people that are younger, represent the future, into the conversation. It just needs to be done. There's a lot of interpretation on laws for people who were around when there was segregation. So how can people who lived through that on the wrong side of it make decisions about it objectively? It's hard. I can't even make decisions about it objectively because I've never experienced it. These people have and know both sides of the coin and still make the wrong decisions. Anywho, it's frustrating. It's super frustrating, and I'm white. So as frustrated as I am, I know all of you are. And you're probably even more frustrated with me because I voted for Trump in 2016. But I voted him based on the agent of chaos theory. He was going to go in there and turn DC upside down, which he did. You can't deny that he didn't. Like, there's no way to look at it. He really questioned the long-standing traditions. He pushed them to the brink. He pushed laws to the edge. He's still stirring up stuff, even though he's not there. And I hoped with all that, he would not... And this is my mistake. I didn't expect him to fold on his beliefs so hard that it would impact things I didn't think he'd go after. I really thought he would come in and help the economy. And that's if he would have came in and that's all he did, and he didn't talk to anyone, he didn't tweet, he didn't Facebook, he just focused on the economy, I think it would have been a win. Instead, he talked, he tweeted, he Facebooked, he talked some more, and he tweeted some more, and it was just a friggin' plane crash that on repeat. It was like the Groundhog movie equivalent of a plane into the mountain over and over and over again. But I voted for him because he was an establishment. I thought he would do better. You hear a lot of stories, you watch what he did in the past. Yeah, he's got some questionable actions. A lot of people who are quote-unquote good people did dumb stuff or did things that are criminal-based. I get that. I really get that. But he didn't seem like... I don't believe he... This is going to be very controversial. And I don't know if it's going to be... Look at it this way. I don't think he's a racist. I don't think he cares enough to be a racist. To care... He does not care about white pride enough or his standing as a white man to be racist. What he cares about is being liked, and what he thinks people like about him is that he speaks for those that happen to be racist, anti-Semitic, and all that. I think, to put it bluntly, Donald Trump is the ditto Pokemon. You put him in a room, and he will mold himself to get the loudest reaction out of that room. He'd walk into a Klan rally, and you would think he was the Grand Duke. And he pulls that off pretty well. I don't think at the end of the day he believes a damn word that comes out of his mouth. I don't think he has beliefs at this point. I think he will say what he has to say to the group of people he is currently talking to get a positive reaction in his favor. He's an egomaniac. He just wants people to want him. So he will say what he has to say. And he says a lot of horrible shit. He says a lot of racist things, a lot of anti-Semitic things. He by definition, he is. But at the core, I don't think he is. Only because he just morphs. I feel like had he felt that he had a better shot on the Democratic side during the 2016 election, Republicans would be scrutinizing him on the other side of the coin. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. I'm not defending the man. I sure as hell am not. And I will explain why later. But he's just morphing to the crowd. He plays a crowd well. He knows what the audience wants to hear. And he chose this Republican path. He found a silent majority of that party, which is very toxic, very loud, very misinformed, and very okay with him representing it. Because if you look at the where he plays well at in the South, it makes no damn sense. He's a New Yorker. Why the hell do you want a big businessman from New York coming down to good old Georgia or coming down to Texas and playing to your base? Like, how does he play to that base? And he plays to it because when he holds those rallies, he speaks to exactly what they want to hear. And none of it's good. He feeds into the hate of every group, amplifies it, and for whatever reason, in the last 4 years, that anger and that hate is a bigger motivator than, like, can't we all just get along? And that works on both sides. I'm not just bashing the Republicans and Trump and all the Trumpeteers. I'm just saying, when people get pissed off, that's when people start watching. That's when people start filming. And that's what's being pushed to the masses. So that's why I think he was as polarizing as he was. And I absolutely regret voting for him in 2016 because as much as I wanted the chaos, I didn't want the chaos to be among what Bernie affectionately referred to as the 99%. I wanted the 1% to implode on itself. Instead, Trump was able to rile up the 99% on both sides, getting people to love him and make him feel that they felt that he was the voice of the voiceless, which is not true. And then on the flip side, pissing off the other side of, like, you are just a terrible human being. When all he is just, he's like a harbinger. He is a shell of a man that is just, he's a megaphone. That's all he really is. He holds these rallies. He listens. He gets a feel for where he's heading. He knows the city he's chosen. He knows the people that are attending. And he knows what to say to get them up and running. And all riled up. He was holding pep rallies across the country. Rallying up all these people. Getting them nice and really going. And he did. And he's still firing them up. He's been out of office, and he's getting ready to go on more rallies. He did rallies while he was running the country. He knew how to play to that. And that's why I absolutely regret voting for him. And I made amends by voting for Mr. Biden in 2020. Now, I'm going to be flat out, too. I didn't want him. So here we are in two elections that actually mattered, and mattered hard. And I have been given three options over those years that I don't care about. I don't want to run the country. Joe Biden, I believe, is a genuine man. I believe he does care. There is empathy there. There is no empathy from Trump. And that is prevalent in the 4 years he was president. And why I fell out of it. When you... And I could tell you the exact moment, which should have been a lot sooner, but it was... We were quarantined because of the pandemic. All you had was TV, because what else were you going to do? You couldn't go out and socialize. So you're watching this, and I'm watching the protests from, I believe it was the George Floyd incident, and the Black Lives Matter marches, and it was the one in D.C., and the moment that it was just like, nope, this isn't right, which again, should have come a lot sooner on my part, and I hate that it didn't. I fall into that circle of just not caring enough, but to watch on TV him deliver a press conference, decide he was going to take a Bible, walk across the street and take a photo op at a church he's never attended for a service he probably does not believe in, because I do not believe he is a church-going man. He's going to play it to his base. That's exactly what the picture was for. But to use authority, I want to say it was the National Guard. It might not have been. It might have been local DC police. But use whoever was policing that protest. Mind you, the protesters were relatively close, but they were at the stop point that was allotted to them, to tear gas them and move them back. To take a photo op with a Bible, a book he's probably never fucking read, in front of a church he's never attended. And at that point, it was clear to me, and again, it should have been cleared from the get-go, but you don't give people good choices. You got to pick one between one or the other. He was just there for himself. And there was no fixing that. And it got worse. It got worse. You just listened to him. It's like, dear God, can't believe he's saying that. Like, a lot of the whole 4 years that he was president, it was, what is this idiot going to say today? What is this idiot going to say today? If we're just stuck with him tweeting and being dumb and offensive for the sake of being offensive, or trying to bully people for the sake of bullying people, at least he's just tweeting. It can't get any worse. It does. I was wrong. I think from 2016 to 2020, it was just 4 years of me constantly being wrong, both in a political sense and in my personal life. But to sit there and watch him use officers or National Guard, again, I don't remember what it was, to move people back who were protesting police brutality, mind you, for a photo op was just annoying as hell. And then ultimately, at least by that November, I was able to pick Joe, because I would not have been able to live with myself had I not picked Joe, even if I abstained. And then the January 6, 2021 incident happened. It's like, dear God, man, shut the hell up. Like, you clearly don't understand that this isn't a show. This isn't a rally. You have incited an army. People who are willing to march on Capitol Hill in the name of you for the wrong reasons. And I will revisit the January 6th incident, because I do think there's a key thing here I want to talk about. So at this point, I want to apologize to everyone for voting for him in 2016. And you know what? I probably could have skated by had 2020 not happened. Because he wasn't that, he was dumb. He was so dumb, like an embarrassment, really. He was just an embarrassment to the country on what he said and what he did. But if that's all he was, because he was an embarrassment of what he said, and people didn't take him serious anyway, and he didn't really do any serious repercussions against the country, at least he would have been out in 2020 with minimal damage, or by that election with minimal damage. But for whatever reason, he fucking hit the gas and just started doing as much as he could to rile up, hit that side, or that, I want to say, like, portion of the Republican Party, but it's definitely the vast majority of it right now, who maybe distanced themselves from him for like a week and then went right back in, realizing like, that's the vibe of the GOP now. That's how we roll. It's mind-boggling. So in 2020, I felt that I had a chance to make amends, even though I don't firmly believe in this. Like, the one, Chris Dace's vote in Deptford, New Jersey, is not going to sway the election one way or another. I don't believe that at all. Realistically, the 2020 vote that I did was a peace of mind for me to say, well, I didn't vote for him this time. I learned from my mistake. I admit that I was wrong. It was a bad social experiment, and sometimes chaos is not what we need. And then we now have a guy who we're back to what I would consider normal. I don't agree with all of his policies. I don't agree with this excessive use of executive orders that keeps happening. I really am annoyed with the stalemating that happens in the Senate, and then the bullying that happens in the House based on whatever party's in charge. That's not how you run a country. That's not how you run anything successfully. And it's a joke. And it bothers me because there's a lot of people in here that go, you know what? Bipartisanship can happen. It happened 30 years ago. You know why it's not happening? Because you're old, grumpy people who won't get the hell out of office. So people who want to make change can make change. Which is, I get it. The old person can be like, well, on the flip side, he gets a little too extreme from the younger generation. Well, maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's, because what we are is not working. It's not. I personally think we are so far behind the 8 ball because what I would consider immoral issues should be done with. Like, you'll throw out, like, this is such a weird episode because you're really taking hard stances on things. And I harken back to the first comment I made at the beginning of this episode where I said, as you can do whatever you want to do. Believe in whatever you want to believe, as long as you don't hurt anyone else or trample on their right to do whatever they want. That's my political stance. It's not red, it's not blue, it's purple. It's a mesh of both. Economically, I don't want to waste money. We shouldn't be spending money on stupid things like a wall. Shouldn't be spending money on, like, invading other countries. I get it. You want to stand up for the smaller guys, but that needs to be a joint collective on the planet, not a brunt that America has to take by themselves. We could have the strongest army. We don't have to flex it all the time. We don't have to be the only one flexing it. But it's just like all those moral issues, like, to me, we'll take example pro-life, pro-choice, abortion, right? And all this ridiculous bullshit that's going on right now where they're trying to retract it. It's dumb. I don't care where you stand on this issue. There is no greater punishment to a woman than having to go through it. To have to make that decision. To have to experience what they have to do to have it be done. And that's, as a man, that's not even my decision to make. But to sit here and say that they can't, and that there has to be limits on it, and that you'll go to jail if you do it, I don't think you realize the mental punishment and the mental anguish just doing it does to a person. I've seen it. I've witnessed people break down that had to do it. It's not fun. I'll never experience, like, as sad as I felt for them, I wasn't them. And I personally couldn't make that call. I can't. That's not who I am. Okay? So in that instance, yeah, I'm probably pro-life, but I'm also pro-choice because it's not mine to have. You know what I would do? but that doesn't mean that other people have to do it. And I'm a firm believer of that. So instead, you're making it dangerous for people who need to do this. Putting people in a weird gray legal area if they can do it, if they have to do it, and if it calls for like a medical emergency. And you put laws out there that could screw over a doctor or kill the mother. Like, what? Why is that still a thing? Why is it still a thing that marijuana, that has been scientifically proven several times to be less harmful than alcohol, still putting people behind bars in certain states? Still running ridiculous fines. Why, as a country, would we not want to make money off of just selling the damn shit? That boggles my mind. The fact that the LGBTQ people have to still keep fighting for rights. Why? We're the land of the free. Even though our country was founded by a sect of men who all adhered to all the same religion for the most part, they wrote in the freaking bylaws and foundation of this country that there's a separation of church and state. So I don't care whose God, yours, your friends, some people we don't know, says about something, they don't get a voice in the chambers. They don't get to dictate law. The law that we use is meant to make it fair, because maybe a Jewish person and a Muslim person have different beliefs, but the law is the one that's in the middle and the one you gotta follow. And that means you can practice being Jewish, you can practice being Muslim, but at the end of the day, don't you run that fucking red light. That's the law. And I feel like when I said we were on a tipping point, that's the tipping point. Because there's a generation coming up behind that understand that. But there's a generation currently running things that doesn't. In a weird way, they don't believe that all men are created equal. Or women. Or gender fluid people. They don't believe humans are created equal. They believe, based on their beliefs, this is how it's supposed to be done. Rather than being a country that understands religious freedom means religious followings shouldn't dictate law. It's plain and simple. Yeah, your Bible dictates marriage one way. The Force tells me I can't get married because, as a Jedi, you're not supposed to have attachments like that. I don't force that on you. I don't call you a Sith. You're damn close to it, by my definition. But it's just like, those things I would consider the moral area. Now, what I think the government's job should be is balancing the damn budget. Making sure everybody has a fair playing field. And I mean fucking everybody. I don't care what color people are. I don't care what gender they are. Everybody should have a fair shake. That's what America was supposed to be. Instead, you have this old 1% broken system that runs itself every 2 to 4 years, depending on the fucking cycle they're on, and just repeating the same thing with minimal changes. They're throwing a bone to the 99% every once in a while, hoping that'll keep them quiet. But the good thing is, people aren't being quiet. And I applaud that. On both sides. And that's what brings me to January 6th. When they stormed the Capitol. Do I agree with what they did? Absolutely not. I don't believe they should have stormed the Capitol because of the election was quote-unquote being stolen. That's a dumb reason. I do believe you should have stormed the goddamn Capitol because those people weren't doing their jobs beforehand. You just chose the wrong date, in my opinion. When they spend weeks at a time filibustering, bullshitting, negotiating, stalling, essentially. Like, for the 3 months they couldn't come to an agreement on how to help people in the pandemic. That's when you should have went. That's when you should have knocked on their door and said, hey, It's time for you to go. The whole reasoning behind January 6th is just dumb. You went to bat, marched on those capitals because you thought the election was being stolen because some crazy guy told you it was being stolen. By definition, it was not. We played by your stupid electoral college rules. You lost it that way, and you definitely lost it the popular vote way. And I know you're going to say, well, the machines weren't checked, and blah, 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 voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. There's no way somebody would have slipped in 5 million votes via voter fraud. It would have to be more. And then at the same time, if the one side was doing it, why wouldn't the other side do it? So the way you march up there was dumb. Did they need that? So the crazy thing about that too is, did they need that culture shock? Absolutely. They need to know that there are people outside that door who are not happy with what they're doing. Again, wrong reasoning why you marched up there January 6th. But the baffling thing is, here we are, almost 6 months removed from that, and there's assholes who are pretending like it didn't happen. If they return for their next term, I have completely lost faith. Well, actually, they will return. You know why they're going to return? Because there's no focus on those type of races. They're those annoying commercials that pop up during your TV shows. And if you're using live streaming things, they're commercials that don't exist anymore because you DVR'd it and you just fast forward through it. Or you just waited for a year for the thing to come out anyway and watch it on Netflix. Their campaigning is fruitless. So you don't know who's running. I'm looking at the primaries for New Jersey, which is next Tuesday, or tomorrow by the time this airs. And people are running uncontested. So we do this to ourselves. I guess the lesson of this entire episode is we just do this shit to ourselves. We want real change. We need to get in there. We need to put term limits. We need to fucking just do what's right. And by right, I mean, why can't everybody live a life that makes them happy? This world sucks as it is. And for whatever reason, people just make it worse for other people. And I don't understand why they would do that. I know I can be a jerk sometimes. I know I can be mean sometimes. I know I can sit there and say things. But never once do I truly believe in my heart of my heart that I purposely fucked over somebody on a massive scale to make sure they didn't succeed. Because if they don't succeed, I'm not winning. And I feel like everybody needs to understand that perspective. Because, yeah, there are going to be times when you have to have a competitive nature. When you're going for a job and you're one-on-one with somebody. Yeah, that might be the only time it really calls for it. But if you're walking down the street, somebody trips and falls, don't stare at your phone. Help them the fuck up. That's all I'm trying to say. And the whole conversation here was my political affiliation. And the whole point was, I have none. Because who would want to be associated with this stupid-ass country and the way that they're doing things? Well, okay, that's mean. Who wants to be associated with the entire political environment that has evolved into what it is today? I believe in what the idea of America should have been. The idea of what people wanted it to be. But better. I want that idea that was fucking thought of by a bunch of old white men in 1776 to be more inclusive and to be better. To give everybody a fair shake. And if there's ever a political party that does that, that's the party I'm voting for. But until then, I'm going to be faced every 4 years at November with a tough-ass decision. The same old from this guy, or the same old from a different shade. And that's no bueno. To end the episode, I'm going to apologize again, because I know what I did in 2016 is reflective of me. I own it. I shouldn't have done it. I wanted change. I wanted chaos. I got chaos. It was not the kind of chaos I wanted. And I messed up. I just want the ability for people to be happy And I want to point this out too. I don't want to sound cheesy that I want people to be happy. I want people to be happy, but I want them to be happy away from me. Like, don't be happy near me. Let me be happy by myself, and maybe if I like you, we could be happy together. But if you're a stranger and you're happy, you go be happy over there. Bubble pods. That is the best thing about quarantine was the pods. Because in your pod, you were king. And nobody could come into your pod because of this deadly virus. We should learn from that. People deserve equal pods to be equally happy or equally miserable. That's what the pandemic showed us. We can all be equally miserable simultaneously in our own homes. So why not try to do the other side of that coin? Simultaneously happy and stop pushing your views on other people and just make laws fair. I don't know how that's hard. Yeah, there's going to be gray areas. But ultimately, if you look at a group of 100, which is totally minimizing the population of America, but say it's 100, and it works for 99 people, stop letting that one asshole that yelling the loudest make the decision. Or maybe that one asshole happens to have the most money, and he doesn't want to share his money. Or that one asshole loves his condo in D.C. and doesn't want to go back to Oklahoma or Kentucky. Mainly Kentucky. Yeah, douchebag from Oklahoma too. Stop. That just needs to stop. Well, next week on a Dacetacular Mind, we'll get back to a lighter topic where I tell you about the origins of the Dace Man Show. I know that you guys have been hearing us tout. We're coming up on our 9-year anniversary. Or 9 full years doing it. But it didn't start 9 years ago. Fun fact, it started like 15 years ago. Made a couple... It was a slow learner, slow grower. Cocooned for a bit. And then evolved into what it is today. And now I'm doing another show, which is a Dacetacular Mind. This episode was heavy. I feel heavy. I feel something. I feel a little angry. I'm shaking a little bit because I did get angry at certain points. I know I messed up. I hope I don't lose any friends that are still left in conversing about this type of stuff. I want to go on record again to validate if you happen to have stayed this entire episode. I don't condone what Trump did. I'm just telling you what I think. And what I think is he's a ditto from Pokemon. But thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week with the Dace Man Show beginnings. And this has been a Dacetacular Mind. Bye, guys.